Welcome everybody to a special interview tonight. This is not exactly toy related, but it's toy adjacent, and I still think it's pretty cool. And it's just I want to a special content and video for people who support on Patreon. You get to see this first, and of course, this will be heavily edited for the YouTube on Monday. But I have a special guest with me tonight, local legend, dominating the radio waves, and of course, doing comics, and of course podcasting, just an overall very interesting dude. Please welcome to the channel. Give a warm Butter Nation welcome to Mr. Fearless Fred. What's going on?
Okay, I thought that was my headphones again causing problems. Like, oh no, what's going on? Sorry. So like before we came on, I was having issues with my headphones, but we're all good now. I'm glad you figured that all out. So that's good.
It was me. I'm like, I better mute myself to not cough into the microphone during the intro. And of course, with the best intentions, things mess up.
It
Sometimes.
happens. That's live broadcasting. It can be really like toy adjacent as well, because we're probably going to spend a lot of time talking about Star Wars and Star Wars action figures, man. Like I can still remember my first Star Wars action figure, which
No way.
I found on a playground. It was Darth Vader. This was 1982. So this is the wild thing, is I found this Darth Vader action figure on the playground in the sand, and I was so stoked about it. And I would pretend it was a walkie-talkie because he had all the buttons on him. And then I went back to the playground the next day, and I was playing with him. And some other kid went, "That's mine." And I went, "Oh, okay." And then they gave it back to him. And it's a really traumatic memory that I'll never forget.
It
But
seems like it.
Just some kid demanding an action figure from me, and I was too small and afraid to deny them, you know?
I was gonna say, you didn't do any interrogation, some cross-examination, like where in the
I was 3.
3 years old, where in the playground did you leave this?
Like, you're 3 years old and you're just like, oh, well, clearly he's telling the truth. Why would anyone make up a crazy story like that? And
the world is brand new. There's no such thing as liars at age 3. You're like, yeah, this kid seems to be on the up and up.
In hindsight, it's entirely plausible it was his action figure. So I remember finding it on the playground. So it's possible that it was theirs. I mean, maybe this grudge that I've been bearing for this random child my entire life has been justified or been unjustified because he was in the right by demanding his toy back. You'll never know.
But now, as an adult with adult money, have you gone back and maybe searched for this Darth Vader, a replacement, or you just want to hold that memory?
I don't want to recreate that. I don't want to dip into those memories again. But I've got many Lego Darth Vaders, so that's pretty good. I do. It's weird. I love the Lego minifigs, and I think the Star Wars Lego minifigs specifically, I've had a huge thing for ever since the very first Star Wars Lego sets were coming out back when the Phantom Menace was released. I remember buying the original Sith Infiltrator in Lego, and how blocky and goofy looking that thing was.
Oh, damn. You know what? I might have something for you. I might have something for you. Well, I definitely have something. It's just deciding on which one it is. But hey, man, thank you so much for joining me tonight. I've told the story to some people before. I met you on my way to San Diego Comic-Con. I'm a fairly childish person, and I was going through the airport. The gate was a direct flight to San Diego, and I said to my wife, "Let's play a game. Let's profile, like, based on someone's appearance, are they going to San Diego Comic-Con or not? Like, are they kind of like a geeky person, or are they not?" And you're not, but it's the fact that when I walked by, it was two guys. One was holding a comic book.
We're doing social media for the book because the book came out that day.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, it was the 4th issue of Dead Romans came out that day. So we were taking like pictures of it to do social because our editor Allison said, do some social, get it out there that you guys are going to San Diego and the book is out. So we were at the airport doing pictures and stuff. And then
last minute,
right before we got on the plane,
Perfect. So yeah, you guys were holding a comic book. I saw you had a tattoo calf sleeve of, I believe it's Conan the Barbarian, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna see if my theory pans out. you guys are going to Comic-Con, aren't you? So not only were you going, like, you're actually in the industry. Like,
Yeah.
it just worked out, and you and Nick, super nice guys to talk to.
Well, like we're really excited to go, because like Dead Romans is like our, our Nick had been doing a lot of comics in like the early 2000s and stuff, and he sort of got away from comics and was doing a lot more commercial art. Yeah, there we go.
I'm ready.
He also he's done some like more like fancy comics. Like he did this book Kank, which is really, really good, and I'd encourage everybody to take a look at. It's about Igor Kank, that bicycle thief in Toronto, and it's a fascinating book. It's like a really cool graphic concept of because it is a comic, yes, but it's one of those comics that sort of like bends a lot of the comic book rules and stuff. It's really good. And so Nick hadn't been to like a big international show in decades.
Right.
And I've never been there as a creator. Like I've been to like C2E2 and ECC as like an indie creator, but never with a bigger book from like a bigger imprint like Image. And so we were really riding high going to like, and also the book was getting a lot of buzz, and going to San Diego and getting to do signings at the Image table was like a huge deal. So we were like the happiest dudes at the airport. I think we were in the best mood out of everybody that was there. It was an awesome time for us.
Yeah.
So you found us at like the perfect time. We're just excited. We just wanted to be friends with everybody.
Just excited to go, doing your last minute social media posts.
Yeah. Right before we like in the plane posting stuff on different formats,
Sir, we're taking off. Please turn on airplane mode. It's like, no, my editor said
2 minutes. Give me 2 minutes.
I need to get these hashtags in.
Yeah, exactly.
Image. Damn it, I put an N.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that, it ended up being I had to get a seat change, and I was like, I said to my wife, I'm very uncomfortable in my seat, and she said there's one in the row right in front of me, and I asked the flight attendant and if it was cool to switch, because you watch movies and they're like, who's in this seat, you're not allowed to move. I thought that was real, but maybe that's just movies. And she's like, yeah, go ahead and move when we're in the air. And turns out I sat next to you, and it's just crazy how that works out.
And I was working on my audio drama when you sat down, and I had everything positioned, and so I had a magazine on my lap underneath the table, and I was moving the mouse around and moving my hands like with all the shortcuts on the top.
Give you the big screen so that people can really.
Yeah. So my hand, this hand is doing all the shortcuts on the keyboard. This hand is underneath, and it was moving around like this all the time.
Tray furiously.
Yes. So I had to like listen. I'm not pleasuring myself under here. I'm editing audio, and I lifted up the keyboard to like, there's a mouse under here. I'm working. I'm doing work here. And it was because, flights, and you don't know who I am. Like, you never know. Like,
yeah, I still didn't know.
There's always stories about like these weird things happening on planes. So I have to make sure that you're aware that I'm not being some creepy, weird guy or anything like that on the plane, Like, oh, look, I'm looking at sound waves. It's getting me all aroused.
What an icebreaker. I'm sitting there minding my own business. He just gives me a little elbow. He's like, hey, fella, I just want to let you know.
Which is probably the thing that somebody who is pleasuring themselves under the dinner tray is going to say.
Yeah.
Just so you know, I'm not doing exactly what I am doing right now.
Definitely nothing suspicious happening. But, but we got to chatting. You're doing your audio thing. And, the more we chatted, I'm like, this is one interesting dude. And then of course later on I find out it's like, oh, that Fred Kennedy is Fearless Fred, local legend. So that we kind of got how we met out of the way, for some people who might not know, the non radio listening people, or maybe not from our locale. Like what's Fearless Fred? Who is Fearless Fred?
Oh, dude, I'm just a guy who wanted to take anthropology in university, and I wanted to be a paleocultural anthropologist. When I was like in my high school years, I did lots of drugs, And so I was all about this idea. Like there's always that, I think it's Timothy Leary that had this like idea that humanity is sort of the only reason we have this state of consciousness is because we ate all these magic mushrooms back in our primordial caveman days. And I was like, oh, that's got to be true. So I wanted to become a paleocultural anthropologist and study the evolution of mankind and how our brains went from thinking like animals to thinking like us and what led to that. And that's legitimately what I wanted to do for a living. And then my dad gave me this sit down speech. He's like, listen, I don't want to ruin your dream for you. I think that if this is what you want to do, I think that's great. But you need to understand the financial realities of your situation, that we cannot afford to help you get a PhD. We can help pay for some of your education, but we cannot afford a PhD for you to do this. I'm not saying you shouldn't. Just be aware that if you do this, you're going to be graduating with many thousands of dollars of student debt.
Right.
Mayhaps you should look at some other things that you could do that maybe involve community college instead of university for years. So I went to broadcasting school is how I started. And I went to a school in Nova Scotia that doesn't exist anymore. King's Tech, which was in the Annapolis Valley in Nova Scotia. And I took my college demo tape from the college station and I used it to apply for jobs. And I got a job about 4 months into college. And so then I left college and I took it and I've been working in radio full time ever since. So I remember getting the job offer and my college radio teacher telling me, like, I said, should I stay here? Should I like leave? And he was like, yeah, man, get out of here. Like, why would you stay? Like he was, because all the other teachers were like, well, you need to have the diploma of the community college in order to be respected in the industry because people won't hire you. And he was like the actual like radio teacher that because I knew I wanted to be on air on the radio. And I remember him being the exact opposite, being like, no, get out of here. Like, they just want your money. He goes, they're all just going to tell you they want your money. So there's nothing you're going to learn here that you're not going to learn on the job. So get out, work full time, get time in the studio. And then from there, it was just like working in small town radio stations in Kentville, Nova Scotia, Port Hawkesbury and Cape Breton, Dryden, Ontario, Winnipeg, then Lloydminster, back to Winnipeg, Edmonton, and then to here. And that was, I got to Toronto in the summer of 2009, like 14 years ago is when I got to Toronto and I was working at The Edge. And then I started doing Teletoon. I worked on Teletoon at night, hosting Fred at Night on Teletoon for 7 years. That's how long we did it. And that was one of the coolest gigs ever. And that was what sent me to San Diego the first few times that I went to San Diego. And that was a really cool experience because it was a lot of interviews. So we would have the shows that would be on Teletoon and in some cases YTV. And because I was there, I would be doing all these interviews with the people from these shows while I was there. And I got to meet Michael Jai White, which was one of the coolest things ever because I'm a huge fan of Black Dynamite. It's one of my all-time favorite movies. And that was when he was like writing the idea of Black Bart, which is the movie that just came out, which is like a movie. It's like Black Dynamite, but in the Old West almost is the best way to describe it.
So you go from radio. How do you make that kind of that jump or kind of both into radio and Teletoon at the same time? It's different themes, but is it just because the nature of hosting and speaking and just having that ability that you can kind of have that crossover?
It was so because I was very naive and I didn't understand anything that I was doing. Like, this is the thing. I need to emphasize that my entire career has been almost blind luck and just like raw enthusiasm and not understanding what's really going on. Like consistently not being aware of what's happening. Like, so when I got my job offer to come to Toronto to work at The Edge, I got a phone call from one of my bosses that I had, this guy named Christian Hall, who is like one of the biggest Star Wars fans that I know. And he's also one of the most brilliant like programmers and believers and personality that I can think of. And he calls me out of the blue and he's like, listen, Ross Winters wants your phone number. And my reaction is, who's that? And he goes,
My reaction.
He goes, he's the national programmer for all of Chorus Entertainment. You should probably know who he is. And I went, oh, yeah, you can give me my phone number, I guess. Like I consistently don't know anything that's ever going on. And it's almost the exact same situation with Teletoon. I got an email from some guy named Russ, and I didn't know who this guy was. And he's like, hey, would you ever be interested in working at Teletoon? And my reaction was I wrote to him and I was like, I talked about how much I loved the show Duckman with Jason Alexander, which was one of the original lineup launch shows from Teletoon. Because I remember when Teletoon launched, it was 97, 98. And I was working at a restaurant while, like, it was just after high school. I was working in a restaurant as like a line cook, and I would get home from work and watch Teletoon until like 3 or 4 in the morning. And it was like the shows that were on there were like the Quads, Duckman, what was it, Home Movies, all these shows like that, like all those weird early Adult Swim animation type shows. And so I talked about, like, I sent this email to this guy about all these shows that I like. This is like the director of Teletoon that I'm like just gushing about cartoons to, not even realizing who I'm talking to. Just no clue.
Just like a kid reading Santa his wish list.
Yeah. And so then he goes, hey, so we're thinking about doing some segment hosting, and we'd like to come in and talk to you about it. And I didn't think he was talking to me about hosting anything. I thought he was talking to me about what I thought would be a good host on the channel. So I go into this meeting, and then, like, this is the thing that you got to understand about TV meetings. There's always a fruit tray. TV people love fruit trays. I don't even know what the deal is. They love fruit trays. There's always a fruit tray. There's always a fruit tray on the table.
I had no idea.
Yeah, they love fruit trays. And there's like, no one will ever touch the cantaloupe. So go for the cantaloupe first. Get the pineapple. That's a good one. And the cantaloupe. Those are the best things to get. So sit down, and I'm just eating fruit while they're explaining this concept. And there's a whole table of people explaining the concept of, we're going to do these segment hosting, and it's going to like basically be a show that is in between the shows, and we're going to thread content. We're going to lead from one thing to the other. We're going to do long interviews. You'll do a 2-minute segment. You do a 1-minute segment, all these things. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then they're like, all right, we want you to talk about this show, and we're going to make you talk for a minute. Can you do that? And I'm like, dude, this is literally what I do. And I'm like, okay. So they asked me to talk about, I think it was to talk about home movies. And they wanted me to talk about home movies for 1 minute. And then in my head, I'm like, how is anybody not, like, everybody can talk about a show for 1 minute. So I just start talking about it. And I'm like, okay, now we want you to talk about the same thing. I want you to do it in 30 seconds. And they're like, they got to stop watching. Like, go.
Oh, wow.
So I did it. And then they're all like, they're looking around and she's like, okay. Yeah. Well, what are you doing on Monday? Da, 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 da. And I'm like, I don't know. What do you need me to do? And then they're like, well, we were going to film at the Liberty Village Studios, and we'll see you there at around 7 a.m. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So when, like, how do I know if I'm in consideration for the job? Like, what's going on now? And they're all looking at me like, no, you got the job. Like, it's your job. You have it now. And I was like, and I was so suspicious. I was like,
were you just focused on the fruit tray, or
no,
just not in the moment?
Some of the best pineapple I've ever had. But I'm like, I'm just sitting there wondering, like, oh, like, I left being, I don't know. I think I just got punked. Like, looking for like a hidden camera or something,
right?
You know, like I didn't believe that I had the gig until I saw it on television. I didn't tell anybody that I had the gig until I saw it on. The only one of my friends outside of my wife, the only friend that knew about it was one of my comedian friends, Kathleen McGee, she's coming to Toronto to do some shows in November. And if you like comedians, she's one of the best. She's one of the best going. Hilarious comedian. She's coming to town in November. And I remember she was the only one that knew about it outside of my wife. And she came over to my house to watch it, and like, what if, and I was explaining to him, like, but what if we turn it on and it's not there? What if we turn on TV and they forget to put it on TV? And she's like, I don't think that's how this works, but let's just watch. So we watched it, and it was so weird, man, seeing myself on TV for the first time. And that was one of the funnest things that I've ever gotten to do. And I met some really cool people when I did that show. Trevor Hammond was our director, and him and I did all of the writing together. Not all of the writing. I need to also credit, because there's one other person who was a huge factor in that show. Annette Friesen was her name, and she's the best. Like in terms of like, when I think of like producers that just have everything together, Annette Friesen is the best. And she now works on all the Barbie animated features. So
cool.
She's like, and that was her dream, is to do animation. Like that's what she always wanted to do. And so it was Trevor, Annette, and myself were like the backbone of that show. And I was very new to that whole world and didn't really know what I was doing. And having a director / writer and a producer / director, like those two, it was a phenomenal experience. And I think it is really important that when people are doing things that are new and they're unfamiliar with, and they're like complete spazzes like myself, who just seem to like muddle their way through their existence, it's always important that when somebody who has been doing it longer than you tells you something, listen and learn and grow. And I'm very grateful that I got to work with those people, because I always sit back and wonder, like, would I be where I am if I hadn't come across and worked with these incredible collaborators throughout multiple points of my life? And it's the same with comics too. Adam Gorham is a guy who was him and I were becoming friends around the time that I was starting on Teletoon. And I remember like explaining all the things that were going on to him with TV, and he was like my comic book TV director, producer, like, because Adam was an artist and I loved reading comics, and together we were kind of like learning how to create comics step by step as we went. And to this day, that when I need like guidance about the world of comics and the right choice and the wrong choice, Gorham is always one of the people that I seem to like lean on. He's just a fantastic human being and a fantastic talent. Jason Lowe as well, who I know you're friends with. Yeah, I ask Jason a lot of questions about things all the time.
The nicest dude.
The nicest dude. And a fantastic method actor, I want to say, because he's in the radio play, and he plays a mud trooper whose name is Eltherium, who is he's a regular rifleman in the platoon, but he is also a great thermal detonator tosser. He is the guy in the platoon that always can pinpoint things. And there's times where I'll leave notes in the script. Like there was this one scene where they've just gotten through this really hairy situation, and some of the mutters are sitting around talking about things that have just happened. And the thing that I know, because my father's military, and so there's a lot of things in that radio play where I'll ask, because I want it to have a very boots on the ground feel.
Right.
Like the Andor vibe of the little people. These aren't stormtroopers. These are mud troopers. They're the guys that are not the face of the Empire. Like in the Battle of Mimban in the opening of Solo, those are mud troopers. They do the nitty gritty dirty fighting.
Right.
And so after this big encounter they have, which I don't want to ruin for anybody in case they listen, they're sitting around eating, they're rehydrating and they're eating. And I wrote in the script for Jason, sound like you're eating. And he was eating while he was delivering the dialogue. And then when you listen to the dialogue, it sounds like he's actually eating mid-conversation. It's great. It's fantastic.
I would expect no less from Jason Lowe. That's so good.
I'm always trying to get him to make a Mud Trooper action figure. He has yet to do it, but one day he will. I'm stoked for that.
The podcast, we're gonna get to that in a second, and we'll circle back to that. I just want to say hi to Sam and Courtney in the chat. What's up? Courtney says, from humble Big Sexy Comics. at Teuton at Fan
Teuton,
Expo.
yeah.
Image Dead Romans at SDCC. What a ride it's been.
Yeah, so Adam and I, we started our own imprint, man. We did our own imprint. It was called Big Sexy Comics, is what it was called. And the first book we did together was Teuton. And I will listen. I love indie comics, and I love supporting Kickstarters for indie comics because there's some wild stuff that happens, and I am very proud of that book that Gorham and I did. It was 4 years we worked on this one book, and we put out the first year we did one floppy, and then we did a full trade the second year, then we did another trade, and then another trade. We did a book that was 3 trades. It was just shy of 400 pages, and it was this story about this it was historical fantasy, I guess you could say. It had the Lithuanian pantheon of gods, and then the Northern Crusader. It was in the Northern Crusades in Lithuania, and so the Lithuanian pantheon of gods is very similar to the Norse pantheon, but way more violent and dark. Which sounds crazy if you've read a lot of Nordic myths, but there's like multiple gods of death. There's a long list of gods because so many of them got murdered, because there was an actual god whose function was to just kill other gods. And they were like a mercenary named Zaburnus, who sought immortality from one of the gods and was cursed with immortality. And so his function was just to kill other gods. And we built this wild story that we wrote over like 4 years. And I'm super proud of that. It was a pretty dope ride from the beginning to end. And it was heartbreaking watching it all finish, because I knew that Adam already had imprints on him to like do more work, and I knew I was going to lose him.
Oh no.
It was very heartbreaking that when that book ended, I was like, it was like that meme of the guy crying at the feet. That was me watching Adam go off into the sunset to do amazing things.
That sounds like a crazy awesome premise.
Yeah.
But we know you like Star Wars a lot. What are some things and topics that really influence your comic book journey so far?
I would love to write a Star Wars comic book so bad.
Yeah.
I'm pretty good friends with Mike Walsh too. Like, he's one of my closest friends, and he always says, he goes, you won't like writing a Star Wars comic. He goes, you'll love writing your Star Wars radio play because there's not multiple editors, people from Disney, people from Marvel, people from, you list it. He goes, no one's impeding on what you're doing. But I like Star Wars, and that's always been the dream, that like writing comics is super fun, and I love the comics format. But the idea of doing like a radio play with Star Wars, it was an interesting process, actually. So when Galaxy's Edge opened up, I got to go to the grand opening of Galaxy's Edge
nice
at Disneyland, and it was because I had a really good relationship with Disney. I'd done all kinds of work with Disney for things like Rogue One and for the new trilogy and all that, and also for Marvel as well. Like we did a full hour-long special about the Guardians of the Galaxy, breaking down the origins of the Guardians of the Galaxy to prepare people and acclimatize people for the movie. Like anytime Disney was doing a movie, we did massive theme nights on Teletoon, and I got really good friends with some of the people that worked there. And when they were opening Galaxy's Edge, I do wonder if I got to go as the Canadian radio representative for that, only because of the relationships that I had. And I part of me thinks that it was kind of like you've done enough work for us, buddy, you get to go. You know what I mean? I don't think that I was necessarily needed there, but and I'm going with Carlos from ET Canada, formerly of the Zone on YTV. So it was the funnest trip ever.
Yeah.
And when I was there and going through Galaxy's Edge, honestly, like that is when the Mud 79 premise was really coming together, was there. And when I cried when George Lucas was on stage, opening, I cried. I'm not even gonna lie. I was, and I'm not gonna be, I was so drunk I cried. No, dude, I was just so emotional. I got to see George Lucas on stage, and then Mark Hamill is there, and Harrison Ford comes out, and I don't know if you've seen any of the footage from the way they opened Galaxy's Edge officially. Because I like, dude, you know how when the concert starts, everyone rushes to get to the front of the stage? That was me at the opening ceremony of Galaxy's Edge. Like, I'm bumping past people in
knocking
the
these kids over.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it was, dude, it was so wild. So, and there's a photo of me. Carlos took a photo of me with like tears in my eyes. Like, look back at the camera, and I'm like crying because I was so messed up. But so the way it all opens is George Lucas is on stage and he's talking about Star Wars because Bob Iger brings George Lucas on stage, and George Lucas like talks about Star Wars and how he never thought this would happen. He never thought he would see this, you know. Mark Hamill comes out, and Mark Hamill is like, you know what? Like, let's get her going. And he's like, but I can't start them because they do all this big presentation in front of the Millennium Falcon, which everyone takes pictures at, you know.
Yep.
But the stage is set up in front of it, right by the cockpit. And he says, Mark Hamill says, I can't fly the Millennium Falcon, but I know who can. And the light in the cockpit goes on, and Chewbacca's in the pilot's seat. And he's like, and Chewbacca starts, he hits the engine, and the classic, and everyone's like, the whole crowd, oh, and then
like it wasn't scripted.
Like it wasn't scripted. We're all, you know what? You're just riding it. Honestly, like when you're there, you're just so caught up, especially if you're a big Star Wars fan. And like, I'm going to get emotional about it again. But Mark Hamill says, I know you can laugh, whatever. You do the same thing if you were there, man.
I would. I appreciate the story.
So Mark Hamill says, he goes, I know who can get it going. The one and only Han Solo. Harrison Ford walks onto the stage, and it's like, and like I said, I'm in the front row. Like I'm like a 15-year-old girl at a Backstreet Boys concert in 1997. I am losing my mind. Okay. This is it. This is the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life.
This is our equivalent.
Yeah. And so Han Solo, Harrison Ford, the man, not the character, comes on stage, and he does this big speech about how people say he doesn't like Star Wars and how that couldn't be farther from the truth, because of Star Wars gave him a love of acting again. It gave him a sense of imagination again. It rejuvenated his idea in what the power of cinema could be. And it was just like, either he's the greatest actor ever, which is possible, or he was like legitimately being emotional about it. And he talked about how much he loves Star Wars and how grateful he is to be part of this. And he said, let's get it going. And he looks at the crowd and he goes, Peter, this is for you. Because this is like a week after Peter Mayhew had passed away. Peter, this is for you. And he punches the side of the Millennium Falcon. The whole thing lights up. And then fireworks go, and then the music, and I'm like, oh my God. I losing it, dude. It was the most emotional day.
I can't say that I wouldn't cry based on everything that you're describing. I don't think I would have handled it any better.
Dude, all of my friends that are Star Wars fans hate me for being able to be there, you know?
Yeah.
Like, it is, I remember every second of that evening, like the whole experience. It was a mind-blowing, amazing time. Just to see that, happen, it was wild. It was surreal. But that was really, I feel like I'm rambling here, but that night really cemented the need to do Mud 79, because I wanted to do something with Star Wars, and I would love it to have loved it for it to have been some official thing, but time goes, and like you're a parent, you understand, you watch your kids grow and you realize how finite time is, you know, how fast everything goes. And it was the following winter, we went to Disney with the kids. There was a whole group of us, like my buddies from high school and all of our families. There was like 5 families. We all went down together. We all brought our kids. And I remember sitting in the hot tub because we rented a giant house.
Right.
And all the families were in this one giant house. And there was me and my buddies from high school. We're all just sitting in the hot tub. And I started talking about this rough concept of, I never liked how in the Star Wars, the Star Wars idea of everybody that's part of the Empire is the worst, and everybody who's with the rebellion is the best, and that when the Empire came into power, clearly it was the worst for everyone, and it needed to stop, because that's not the way the world works. And that is, I think, one of the things I loved so much about Rebels, which is ostensibly just a kid's Star Wars show.
Right.
But it was the first show to really highlight how there's a lot of people that are working directly for the Empire that are only doing it because they have to. And then when you saw in Solo, he's on this planet that's a shithole. And the only way for him to get out when he's trying to get away is he joins the Empire. He joins the Imperial Army. And it was my friend Neil, he's still one of my absolute closest friends in the world. We've been buddies since literally the second day of high school. And I was explaining how, like, there's probably a lot of people like that. And he goes, absolutely. He goes, take a look at the Vietnam War. And then as soon as I said that, that was the catalyst right there. And I don't know if you've ever watched the Vietnam doc by Ken Burns, but it's this 10-part series, and it's incredible because there's always documentaries that will focus on one side of a thing. This, first of all, the Vietnam doc that he did starts in 1850, and it takes a look at the French colonial period. The actual Vietnam War doesn't even start until halfway through the second episode. You're 2.5 hours deep before that even starts. And even then, it's not really starting. But he talks to North Vietnamese farmers, South Vietnamese farmers, North Vietnamese soldiers, South Vietnamese soldiers from one faction and another, the daughter of a politician, American soldiers. And he goes through like the full spectrum, and it's this incredibly well-rounded view. And I was thinking as I'm watching it, like, the Star Wars universe is that, like, it's very complex. And there was this one interview with this one guy who he's growing up, and he's from the States somewhere, and he was so incredibly eloquent in the way that he was talking, but like blue collar eloquent, meaning like he wasn't using fancy words. He was being very empathetic in the way he talked about things. And he goes, I grew up in a house where my father had fought in the Second World War, and all of his closest friends, the people that he went drinking with, the guys that he went bowling with, were the guys that he served with in the Second World War. Had cousins that went to Korea. The friends that they had, their best friends, were the guys they fought in Korea with. And when JFK came on TV, JFK's Camelot, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And he goes, this was my time. This was what I needed to do. And then he goes, I expected to get there, and I had these images of Paris and people cheering for us as we liberated Paris. He goes, about 5 minutes off the plane, I realized I had been sold a false bill of goods, because that is not what was happening. And he talks about like these experiences about how, and what's amazing is he's smoking a dart the whole time. He's just like puffing on a dart the whole time. And it's like he's talking, but there was no music, there was no nothing. It's just him talking, and he's just like explaining the situation. And it was so humanizing. And it was like, and he talks about like how horrible it was to be there. And he goes, the people that I thought we were trying to save hated me. And then the people that were shooting at me hated me. And then we were doing these things that morally I thought were reprehensible, but they were doing them to us. And he goes, it was all wrong. Everywhere you looked, everything was wrong all the time. It was the worst experience of my life. And then I thought to myself, like, when you watch that scene in Solo and he signs up, that is, I think Solo gets a horrible rap because there's aspects of it that I don't think make a good movie. But I think just like all of the Star Wars movies seem to have these incredible nuggets of a moment of that's a great idea. Like, that's a great idea. Like when he's fighting on Mimban, guaranteed a lot of those guys had family members that fought for the Republic, and they thought, just a new flag. And that's the main character. Like, that's his mentality when he joins the Empires. He thinks, well, my family fought for the Republic in the Clone Wars, and if it hadn't been for the Republic, we would have been killed by the Trade Federation. So why would I not join? Like, I want to get off of this shithole planet in the backwaters of space. I don't want to be a farmer. I'm not a good mechanic. I don't want to be a farmer. I want to get out of here. And it's like he breaks down why he joins. And as soon as I had that, like that, the rest just kind of like not wrote itself, but the rest, the path for the story became incredibly clear for me.
So for anyone who might not know yet, Fred's talking about it's an audio podcast, drama story.
Apple Podcasts like to call it a fiction podcast. This is what my producer.
Congratulations on the feature there. This week for Apple Podcasts.
That was a huge deal. Like, we're on the front page with Apple Podcasts right now, and we just released I think it's the 17th episode. It says 19 episodes there, but those are like trailers and stuff like that. Yeah, intro trailers and all that. But we're 17 episodes deep, and the cast is over 100 people. And they're crazy. Yeah, so the cast is over 100 people, and each episode is like 45 minutes long. It's been a pretty wild ride, man. And what I'm trying to do is get fans of Star Wars together to be part of it. And that's the frustrating thing, is whenever somebody says fan made, there's this perception that it's like it's low rent, you know what I mean? Like, it's not well done, but we're all professional audio producers. We're all like professionals. This is just something we're doing because we're fans of Star Wars. And I have like professional Foley artists that have like slid me some sound effects to like slip into things. And like my first radio job, like outside, like I was on air, but I was also a producer. So it's like a professionally produced fiction podcast or audio drama, if you will. So it's not like that's always the uphill battle, man. Like, people have a very hesitant urge to listen to it because there's this idea that, well, it can't be that good, you know. It's just a bunch of fan wieners just doing something on the side.
It's just a bunch of nerds. But I mean, that's what you were editing on the plane ride.
Yeah. And I made you listen to stuff. And you picked out there was like some level issues on one of the things.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm an amateur professional, so I hear some things. But I think this is super cool, and the way you talk about it is like you can make your own story. Without those, you know, the red tape of, you know, sending it to an editor or Lucasfilm has to approve this. It's just like you can write your story.
I would love to do something official with all the red tape if that offer ever materialized. And I think that I've got, I have like multiple Star Wars stories that are sitting on a back pot. But the thing with Mud is I feel like it's a very unique thing in the Star Wars landscape, in the sense that even if it was to come out as an actual like thing, you know, it would without a doubt like stand out amongst the landscape, because there's never been and the thing with Andor that people love is that it's like us, man. It's like the blue collar people that in the details that make things happen. That line that Cassian Andor says, he goes, they're so full of themselves, they don't think any can just walk in and do it. It's like that type of story has been waiting to be told. And when I wrote a lot of the stuff, the second season has a lot of storylines with, well, we don't need to go there. What if Disney's watching? They're not going to give me a job, man.
Oh, right. Sorry. Unhighlight that.
But like there's, I forgot where I was going with this. the stuff with the ISB and the Imperial Intelligence Bureau and all that stuff. I wrote most of the second season like 2.5 years ago, and then a bunch of like comic book freelance writing gigs came up that prevented me from being able to finish it. And then I'm watching Andor, and they're talking about the ISB and all that stuff, and I was like, I wish I was out right now, because now everyone's going to think that I was borrowing stuff from Andor, and I wasn't at all.
Right. I mean, it's just it's a really cool concept. I think it's important to keep making stuff like this, because even though it's not a thing now, it can become a thing. If someone sees it, they're like, this guy knows what he's doing because he's been doing it for a while. He can tell these stories, and you're not just some nerdy fan writing like fantasy stories. Like you're an actual creator telling stories, with that kind of experience. Is just having your version of stories out there. I think it's super important, and obviously it's being very well received. I love seeing your social media posts with the sound effects, and how things are how some of the sound effects are done with behind the scenes. It's like those in the old days, the radio stories.
Yeah,
Like,
the
it's a
old-timey radio
stormy
drama.
night, and they're shaking a metal sheet, and it's making
Yeah.
thunder and stuff like that. So it's really cool.
There's
It's a really
one
cool idea.
the sound effects, like on one scene, it's like there's they got collars around the neck. The Trandoshans always use those like collars that like will blow up, right?
Right.
There's this one scene where a bunch of the collars start blowing up on people, and to make the sound effect for that was like, ooh, that's a pretty gross sound effect. So I had to like combine a small explosion sound effect with like some metal breaking, and then I wanted to have a meaty pop sound, which sounds gross, and it does sound gross, but you have to make a bunch of them, and then you're layering them all throughout the thing, and you look at the sound wave, and it's like you've got like, it's actually 4 sound effects on top of each other to make one sound, and then you make a few different versions of those, and you're like skirting them all through the sound file. It's pretty great. It's like a puzzle, Stairway to Hell,
Imagine you're just like playing that with no headphones on the plane, and someone just keeps hearing explosions. Yeah.
Oh, that'd be so annoying. Listening to someone edit audio when they're not wearing headphones and you're in the room is the most annoying thing ever, because they're repeating the same little section of audio like over and over and over. I just move it a little bit. Does that sound good? I'll move it a little bit more. That's too much. And it's like, I cannot imagine something more annoying for someone to have to listen to, is like someone else editing audio when you're in the room. It's awful.
I do love the direction that Andor took with having different perspectives on some of the people within the Empire. Some of the people on the different planets, and how they were being affected. And that's always been a theme with Star Wars. It's like, who's to say that the Empire was all evil, and this wasn't just like a small band of like terrorists or something, who, again, it's like the history written by the
victors.
Yes, exactly. So
the thing with Andor that I love is that you're not going to defeat something as ruthless as the Empire without being equally ruthless yourself.
Right.
And that aspect of how you gotta let certain people die to win the long-term goal. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And Luthen Rail, like when he knowingly lets 50 people go off and die, like just knowingly lets it happen because it's going to help him in the long-term goal. That big speech he has about using his enemy's tools against them.
Yes.
He burns himself for a sunrise he knows he'll never see.
That's so beautiful.
I know. And I really actually love the audio editing on that show just as much as the writing as well. The scenes with the ISB are so well crafted on multiple levels. When you see the ISB scenes, there's no music. They don't use any music. The dialogue is used as almost the music. It's so well delivered. It's so punctuated. It's so punchy, and the lack of music adds to that punch. And the sense that you get from it is one of supreme sterility. Like it's so sterile. The
Yeah,
scenes are
everything's
so
all white inside the rooms, the
yeah.
offices, like almost
And there's
like a medical or a
it's
lab or something like
yeah,
that.
it's like it's dead. It's like there's this sense of dead perfection in all of those scenes. And when I was working on Mud and then watching the show, I found myself like you could just close your eyes and listen, and it has that serene radio drama vibe with the way the dialogue is delivered. And it's just, I don't want to say sing-songy, but it has its own composition with just the words. And I love that they were willing to just lean on that. And that makes the elements that involve music so much stronger. Like Kino Loy, when he's doing his big speech and all the stuff in the prison, when he's talking, and as he's talking, the music is stepping up,
Builds.
and you see those beats in what he's delivering, and then it gets, and then that, and the way it expands with the music, and then everyone's leaving and charging, it's just like it means so much more. Like creative and intelligent use of sound and sound editing can have a profound impact on what you're seeing, and you don't even realize that it's happening. There's an audio producer in Toronto, and he's got a Foley site called Audio Studio, and he's won like Academy Awards and like Emmys and all that stuff for his sound editing and his use of sound effects in the background. And the thing that you can do is you can elicit an emotional reaction with sound in the background that people don't even realize they're feeling, because we have these lizard brains that have evolved through the muck over millions of years. And there's certain sounds when you hear them without even you knowing, the hard programming in your body goes, not good.
Right.
That's not a good sound. We need to be on edge right now.
Yeah,
and
I was gonna say, like the
there's
good music will kind of have you feeling a certain way before you realize, like,
that
hey,
you're
something's happening.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that audio is oft forgotten when it comes to like a show or a movie, but I consistently find that Star Wars has like the best sound. Like the sound editing on Star Wars is always so fantastic, and Andor especially is brilliantly done.
Definitely top tier Star Wars.
What is your favorite Star Wars, by the way?
Oh my god, don't do that to me right
Not
now.
movie, like just like it can be anything. It doesn't even need to be a movie. I'll start out. It's got to be Rebels for me. Rebels is my favorite Star Wars, and I love Rebels so much because it combines those small scale elements that we saw in Andor, and then it's also got the big sweeping space wizards magic stuff that you would see in Ahsoka.
That's
And that's
true.
what that's why I think Rebels worked so well, is it combines all those things, and it also doesn't forget that Star Wars makes kids have dreams, and having Ezra as the focal point, and then the rest of the crew having them as the parental focal point, makes it a perfect family viewing experience. Like
They're like a family unit.
Yeah. And like Fantastic Four does the same thing. It covers all the bases. And with Rebels, like my kids they watched the movies, they liked the movies, but they didn't like love Star Wars. But after watching Rebels, they loved Star Wars because that show touched everything. It made Darth Vader terrifying. It made the Force magic. It made the Empire evil and scary. But it also showed that sometimes the people that you think you need to hate are only your enemy by circumstance. Like when what's his face becomes the spy for the rebels, Fulcrum, later on. That was a great turn, and it was like that planet where
Agent Callus?
Callus, yeah. I always get told I look like Callus. If I grew sideburns, I could be Callus.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Although it's a cartoon, so there's a lot of room for your imagination. I think I always go back to A New Hope if it's something that I have to watch. Like I feel I'm in a Star Wars mood, I'm working, I'm like that's usually the first thing I throw on. But I think your reasons for Rebels, it's very well rounded, for sure.
What's your favorite scene in A New Hope?
Something about Luke stepping onto and looking at the suns, and then binary
Dude, that's
sunset comes
exactly what
on,
I was gonna say.
and
I
then
was
it's like
gonna say
like that song.
there
I don't
is
know.
a,
It's something about that.
there's an implication of wonder,
Yeah.
and that idea of like what is out there. It's sort of like when the weekend comes and it's Friday and you're leaving work, and it's like you have this legitimately because you're looking towards the weekend knowing you're going to get to relax all weekend, and it's like that moment in Star Wars, like A New Hope, when he looks at it, it's like what's on the horizon, and it's all ahead of him. And as I've often, there's two suns, and it's like I've like occasionally pontificated of the two sun setting. Is it like those are the two paths that he can choose?
Oh,
Is it
very
the
literal fork in like a fork in
yeah,
the road
yeah, like
almost.
a fork in the road? Can he follow the light side? Can he follow the dark side? That scene is so strong, and there's some real like benchmark Star Wars scenes, and I think that is up there. And then the Yoda explaining the Force would probably be my favorite scene in the whole franchise. Period.
Nice.
And just the way, and to be honest, like I almost feel like that scene has affected my sense of spirituality. Like legitimately, like that line, "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." And it's like that's such a powerful piece of writing,
Yeah.
And it's I think that at its core, when I think of great Star Wars scenes, it's like that line, "Luminous beings are we." It's so good, and I think that it's my big takeaway from the Star Wars franchise. Although I will also say, outside of the movies and the comic books, in the comic books, Kieran Gillen has this amazing scene with Darth Vader fighting Darth Maul as part of this like force imbued challenge of who's the greatest Sith of all time, and Vader shows how powerful Vader is, not just against like going through a hallway killing like rebels, but why is Vader so powerful? Like, how is he so strong? And there's this line about, and I'm gonna misquote it. And he talks about how the dark side comes from hate, and nobody can hate anything more than I hate myself, because
Oh,
he
damn.
knows he lost everything because of his own idiocy and foolishness, and he hates himself for it. And I never thought about Darth Vader like that until I heard that, like read that line. I could hear James Earl Jones saying it in my ears as I'm reading it, of course. But like, nobody hates anything more than I hate myself. And it was just like, oh,
so he's like fueling his own power source is that's
because at this point
pretty cool.
he knows he killed Padme, like he brought her death. And I think there's someone else, I've seen this mentioned online, and I don't know if it's true or not, but that the Emperor sapped Padme's life force to heal Anakin, knowing that if she was dead and he said you killed her in your anger, it would make him strong. And that's what he needed him to be. And I do often wonder if that's like somebody just rambling on the internet, because I don't remember ever reading that myself in anything. But it's a fascinating little Star Wars theory.
There's always little ones out there that
there's so much Star Wars. It's like, how do you know?
Exactly. Yeah. And how do I just choose my favorite? You know what? I think one of the scenes that the most powerful for me in terms of acting was like the final Mustafar battle with Ewan McGregor just shouting at Anakin, who's just burning, by the way, but he's just like, the whole "You're my brother, Anakin." I'm like, oh my god, I don't know why. I don't have any brothers. But that line just tugs at my emotions whenever I hear it. I think it's just crazy acting.
I just love Star Wars so much.
I know, my
Like,
gosh. We could make this a whole Star Wars thing.
Yeah, we absolutely could.
But we haven't even talked about Dead Romans, man.
We haven't. When the action figures
that.
come out, I'm coming back. We'll talk about the Dead Romans action figures from McFarlane Toys when that happens.
Do you want to talk about this for like a quick?
Absolutely, I got time.
Can you talk about Dead Romans for 1 minute straight and then for 30 seconds?
Yeah, for 30 seconds. So Dead Romans is a story that is built around the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, where the Roman general Arminius, who was actually a German hostage as a child, in secret unites the German tribes in a massive revolt against the Romans, and he leads them into an ambush, and he is butchering the Roman forces, but at the same time searching for the woman he loves, who slowly throughout the course of the story realizes that Arminius is this traitor and she is not the man that she thought he was. And I don't want to give away the ending, but let me just say it's pretty dark.
All 6 issues are out now.
Yes, the hardcover comes out the end of November, and the trade paperback will be out the beginning of next year from Image Comics. You can pre-order the hardcover right now, and there's some really cool back matter, and there's some interesting back and forth. Nick actually did all the back matter, and he put some actual text messages that we had been sending back and forth during the process, and about how like some of my panel descriptions were not even really describing anything but just the emotion of what I wanted to convey on the page.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, is this the panel description? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. He goes, no, it's perfect. It's like, I'm like, I was just gushing about what it needed to feel like, because the way the story ends, it's got a great, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Glory. I think it's a Robert Zemeckis film with not Matthew Broderick. Is it Matthew Broderick? Yeah. Carrie Ells and Denzel Washington won his Oscar for it, and it's about the Massachusetts 54th Regiment during the Civil War, and they were the first black regiment. And the movie has this big epic conclusion where they're trying to storm this impregnable Confederate fortress, Fort William Henry, and the 54th chooses volunteers to attack this fort as the vanguard, as a distraction, knowing how severe the casualties were going to be. So the final act of this movie is like these guys knowing they're marching into death, but are proud to do it because nobody thinks they can do it. So they're willing to do it. And that film scene was very prevalent in my thought process when I was writing the final act of Dead Romans. So yeah, it's pretty gory and pretty over the top. And Nick is amazing. He blows it out of the water.
His work is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very, very lucky to be working with Nick, Jose Villarrubia doing the colors, and Andrew with letters, and our editor Allison O'Toole is just doesn't get any better. She's the best.
It's a great team, and I think it really shows in the work. And again, it's so cool that I got to meet you and be. I don't read enough comics, and I feel like I don't get enough exposure to it. So it was an awesome chance meeting, and I was able to pick up the issues from you at Fan Expo, but people can go check out local comic shops. I have a link to your podcast, image links in the video description. So I hope people take a chance to go check those out. And again, you mentioned trades and hardcovers are on the way, and we won't run into each other on our next flights, but we will both be in New York Comic Con.
Yeah, absolutely, we will, for sure.
So I'm gonna see if I am able to find the thing that I have for you. And if I see you there, I'm going to hopefully run into you, give that to you there. But I hope everyone goes check out this book. It's really awesome. The funny thing was we were just offhanded talking about the variant covers.
Yeah.
And then you did this impromptu kind of like research session. So how do you feel about variant covers? Do you only buy them if they're the first issue, or if it's based on the artist, blah blah blah. Because we were talking about Mike Del Mundo, and then I gave my answer. You're like, okay, cool. So Mike's going to be doing a variant for issue
Yeah,
6. Like, why was I a focus group at the airport?
Yeah, Mike Del Mundo. Yeah, he's such a good guy, like the best guy. He has been such an amazing resource for teaching us how to help push the book. He did a variant cover for issue 6 for us, and it's a very cool cover. And he also was like, "This book, you need to do stickers, man. You need to do stickers."
He loves stickers.
He loves stickers.
I have yours, and I have his in a sticker box around here.
So we did stickers together, and at Fan Expo, someone had bought our stickers and was at his table, and they had our stickers in his hand, but he didn't buy them for me. I wasn't at the table, and I was like, "Hey, check out these amazing stickers, man." And the guy's like, "Hey, man, these are mine, man. You can't get them. I got them at a table over there." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, I walked away. You're like, I know where you got them because I paid for them to get made, so absolutely I know where they are.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I did a sticker swap with Mike too. He autographed a couple of Miles Morales ones for me. Yeah, but he's another very talented dude. Yeah, I mean, just again having my head in the sand when it comes to comics, just learning about more and more people and the amazing talent in the Toronto area and the Canadian scene. It's just it's really cool to just kind of absorb and try to just dive in and enjoy all these amazing stories and being told and illustrated, man. It's very cool. Yeah, Courtney, man, that was a fast hour, and I think we could talk more Star Wars, but we could make that.
If you ever do a Star Wars roundtable, I'm not Johnny Toy Guy. I don't know enough about all the toys that have come out about Star Wars because we were broke and we never had them. And if I bought them now, my kids would break them. But I would love to come on and talk Star Wars again. If you ever did like a Star Wars roundtable, I got many opinions and takes and things to say.
Let's set it up. Set it up. Dude, Fred, thank you so much, man.
Thank you
for sharing your time with us. And I want to thank everyone who's watching, everyone who's going to watch this later on the replay. Of course, the patrons on Patreon, of course. I want to give a quick shout out before we get out of here. Thank you to the patrons: Tyler, Michael, Jay, Michael again, Quinn Calling, Tommy K, Dave, Matt Logic 44, Yoko 796 Studios, Fred, different Fred, Nightmare Nemo, Carl, Ria, Toy Farce, Dario, Winger Lose, Dom Muciciato, John, Alexander Eagleson, John Edwards, Sam, Kayla, Corey, Batforce Grumps, Marie P, and I believe Courtney as of an hour ago because he wanted to come check out Fred on here. Appreciate all of your support. It goes towards making more content, going out to New York Comic Con and reporting on toys and things like that, San Diego, and just being able to make more videos because that's I'm having fun doing this with everyone. So thank you. Have yourselves a great evening. Go check out Fred on all the links listed below, and have a great night. Keep toying around. Peace.